morning, ladies. Genesis chapters 37 through 41 tell only the low and high points of Joseph's Egyptian slavery and imprisonment. But he spent at least 12 years there before he suddenly became the Egyptian prime minister. And during that terrible, lonely, desolate time, things seemed to go from bad to worse. Imagine what Joseph might have experienced at about year 9 into his sojourn. This would have been Genesis 39:20 to 23. Darkness had swallowed the light again. Joseph dreaded the night in this foul Egyptian hellhole. It was hard to fight off the relentless hopelessness as he waited for the escape of sleep. Day after monotonous day passed with no sign of change. The familiar desperation surged hot in his chest. His youth was seeping out the cracks of his cage. He was pacing in his soul, and Joseph wanted to scream. Fist to his forehead, he pleaded again with God in the dark for deliverance. Then he remembered. It was the remembering that kept his hope alive and the bitterness at bay. He rehearsed the stories of God that had filled him with awe as a child. God had promised great father Abraham a child by his barren wife, but he made them wait an agonizing 25 years before giving them grandfather Isaac. And God promised grandmother Rebekah that her older twin, Uncle Esau, would serve the younger twin, Father Jacob. But God had mysteriously woven human deception and immorality into his plan to make that happen. Jacob's smile filled Joseph's mind. Oh, Father! He covered his mouth to choke back his sobs. It had been 9 years since he had last seen his dear face. Would he ever see it again? Was his father still alive? He felt something crawl across his leg, and leaping up, he brushed himself off and he shook the mat. A shiver ran down his spine. Joseph hated spiders. Lying back down, he remembered how Father Jacob had been caught in Uncle Laban's manipulative web for 25 years. Yet God was faithful to his word and eventually delivered Jacob and brought him back to the promised land, a wealthy man. And then there was those strange dreams he had had. They had been unusually powerful, unlike any other dream before or since. He felt ambivalent about them. They likely were the reason that he was now in the Egyptian jail. His brother's envy of his father's favor turned homicidal when he inferred that he had God's favor as well. Distant screams let Joseph know another fight had broken out in the barracks. It made him grateful for his private cell, a favor bestowed when he became chief scribe to the warden. He smiled at the irony of this favor. Favor in a prison? His brothers would love this if they only knew. He seemed about as far away from what those dreams foretold as he could be. Yet as foolish as it seemed right now, Joseph could not shake the deep conviction that God meant to bring these dreams to pass. He could not deny the strange pattern he saw in God's dealing with his forefathers. God made stunning promises and then ordained time and circumstances to work in such ways as to make the promise seem impossible to fulfill. And then God moved. The common thread Joseph traced through all the stories, the one thing God seemed to honor and bless more than anything else, was faith. Great-grandfather Abraham believed God's word. Grandfather Isaac believed God's word. Grandmother Rebekah believed God's word. And Father Jacob believed God's word. They all believed, even when it looked like God's word wasn't going to come true. And all of them ultimately saw God's faithfulness to his promises despite circumstances and their own failings. Faith-fueled peace doused the ancient fire of Joseph's chest. I believe you, God, he whispered. Like my forefathers, I will wait for you. I have no idea what my being in an Egyptian prison has to do with your purposes, but I will keep honoring you, here where you have placed me. Bring your word to pass as it seems best to you. I am yours. Use me. In the biblical account, it's tempting to see only Joseph's heroic character and achievements, but God does not want us to miss the largely silent, desperate years Joseph endured. Imagine the pain his brother's betrayal, the separation from his father, the horror of slavery, the seduction and false accusations of Potiphar's wife, and the desperation he felt as youth passed away in prison. Sometimes faithfulness to God and His Word sets us on a course where circumstances get worse and not better. It is then that knowing God's promises and His ways are crucial. Faith in God's future grace for us is what sustains us in those desperate moments. We all love the fairy tale ending of Joseph's story, and we should, because Joseph's life is a foreshadowing of a heavenly reality. God sent His Son to die and to be raised in order to set His children free indeed. John 8:36. There is coming a day when those who are faithful even to death, Revelation 2:10, will hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master." Matthew 25:21. Our current circumstances, however dismal or successful, are not our story's end. They are chapters in a much larger story that really does have a happy ever after ending. Have a nice day.